Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sports Today. It's, as you know for a fact, today is an action-packed day in terms of sport. There's a lot going on, of course. India, Pakistan. There's football going on as well. But of course, today was also the weekend that Formula One was set to make its return at Belgium, and the races just concluded only a few minutes back. And the big news, if you're a fan, of course, of Red Bull or Ferrari, is the fact that Max Verstappen has taken the race win. You heard that right. Max Verstappen has won the Belgian Grand Prix, much to the delight, of course, of the Dutch fans that normally do turn up at Spa-Francorchamps. Remember, he won the race last year as well, but of course, calling last year's race a race as such would be a little bit of, is being generous because, of course, you'd remember last year there was torrential downpour at Spa-Francorchamps, and of course, they could only run a few laps behind the safety car, and that was how the race was actually classified in the end. Today, however, at least the good news is that we got a full race, and it was pretty eventful. Although, if truth be told, we've seen more exciting races than this. This wasn't it. This was one-sided dominance from Red Bull and Max Verstappen, and they are showing just how much ahead they are in terms of being prepared for a title fight than, of course, their rivals at Ferrari are. Now, of course, we know for a fact that Verstappen and Red Bull have such a good lead in the constructors and drivers championship that they didn't need to be too worried about getting the win here. They could have actually dropped points in any of the next few races and still been in very good position. But no problems. Remember, Verstappen took a grid penalty earlier. In fact, in the build-up to the race, it was confirmed that Verstappen and Leclerc and a few others would be taking grid penalties because Spa is generally one of those tracks where, of course, overtaking is pretty simple. It's a very speedy track. There's plenty of opportunities to overtake, particularly, of course, Eau Rouge. So the main focus, of course, in the race would have been to see how it was that Leclerc and Verstappen fared when they were charging from behind the grid. So obviously that was one of the things that it was a known fact that whichever of these drivers actually ended up doing that better, they would in fact end up getting the race win, or at least at the very least a podium finish. Of course, that wasn't the case. Verstappen ended up doing it much better, and he seals a 1-2, a Red Bull 1-2 with Sergio Perez in the second position. Carlos Sainz takes third for Ferrari, but I don't think that's going to be much consolation, simply because their main driver, Charles Leclerc, the main driver in the sense that he's the one who's closest to competing for the championship, only ended up taking sixth place, not even fifth place, sixth place, because Alonso managed to overtake him in the end. Speaking of Alonso, he was involved in a first lap or an early race exchange with Lewis Hamilton. There was a coming together. Hamilton was forced to retire from the race. So that's why I put that in the headline, in case you've noticed that Lewis Hamilton had to retire from the race because there was a collision with Alonso. Race control did investigate, but they deemed no really action was needed because they deemed it to be a racing incident and not one that was intentional on either of those parts. Hamilton, to be fair, in interviews afterwards has also come out and said that, you know what, I should have left him more space and I should have actually let off the throttle there because Alonso was in a blind spot. There was nothing much he could have done. Coming together was his fault, so no real story there. Unfortunate, of course, for Mercedes that they couldn't actually maximize point scoring in this particular race because, as you can see, with Leclerc only finishing in sixth, if Hamilton had to be up there in the top five, then they would have actually stolen a march or could have actually done much better in terms of stealing or getting closer to Ferrari in second place in the Constructors' Championship. But that's the only major consolation you can say. Russell was close to getting that last podium spot. In the end, couldn't actually catch Carlos Sainz, but he does get a very impressive fourth place finish. Nevertheless, let's just quickly run through, of course, the order in that sense. So you had Verstappen, Perez, Sainz, that's your podium finishes. George Russell in fourth. Fernando Alonso takes a very impressive fifth. Charles Leclerc a very disappointing sixth. Esteban Ocon takes seventh to ensure that the Alpines both get in the points, and that, of course, neither of the McLarens were in the points. So Alpine currently very strong in fourth place. Sebastian Vettel gets 8th place at Belgium in what's going to be his last race in Belgium. 8th place within the points. Pierre Gasly collected 2 points for AlphaTauri. But the notable thing, Alex Albon gets his third points finish of the season with Williams, and he ended up finishing in 10th place. So great on him there. Remember, he had qualified in 10th yesterday as well, and the Williams did tend to have pace in certain sectors of the track. So good on them that they actually managed to maximize that opportunity, get in among the points. Of course, there was plenty of disappointment to go around. Both the Alfa Romeos had a pretty bad day. Guan Yu Zhou finished in 14. Bottas retired early in the race. The Haas's of Kevin Magnussen and Mick Schumacher finished 16th and 17th respectively. And of course, Nicholas Latifi in 18th. Yuki Tsunoda could only manage a 13th place finish, but of course, AlphaTauri have generally struggled this year. The biggest disappointment in terms of not getting a points finish were, of course, McLaren. Lando Norris only managed to get in 12th place. Danny Ricciardo, who remember before this race weekend had announced that he would in fact be terminating his deal with McLaren and would be walking away from the team at the end of the season, only manages to get 15th place. So obviously plenty of disappointment to go around the grid. But what's also important to note is that with F1 now back from its summer break, that there's going to be a lot of action in there's going to be a lot of action going doing the rounds, because of course there's Belgium this week, there's of course Netherlands next week, and the week after that is Italy. So plenty of race action still to come over the next 3 weeks. And of course, the season's entering an interesting point. Although at this point, if you ask me, I think the race in terms of the championship fight is all but done. Verstappen, unless something monumental happens, is sealing his second world title. Charles Leclerc and Ferrari did start off well, but were undone not only by poor reliability issues, but also bad strategy. Anyway, I'll take you guys leave for now, and of course get back to enjoying India versus Pakistan, because that is still going on in the background. I've actually come to a quiet spot in the office so that I could have this small discussion with you guys. But I'll get back to the match now. So should you. Thank you all so much for joining us. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, leave us a comment, tap the bell icon so you know when we're going live or uploading a new video for you guys. Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Last but not least, definitely not the least, download the SportsTech app for more such breaking news updates. Thank you all so much for joining me. Bye bye for now.